This is a sort of addendum to that video. There's a few things I said in there with simplifications. I'll just go over them and reference this. I was talking about point particles. It's arguable whether they have one dimension or zero dimensions is one thing. It's not important for the point of that discussion to waste time on that. And I also, there are other, I said about point particles that actually it's much more complicated than that. I said about quarks and electrons. There's electrons are a type called leptons, and there's also another type called bosons, and we could go into all of this, but again, it's not going to change or improve our understanding of what I was talking about. I just made simplifications, and I just want to talk a little bit, as this is in Wikipedia. They stated here about the von Neumann-Wigner interpretation of the observer effect, that the mind is postulated to be a non-physical and the only true measurement apparatus. You know, using all the words, if you go and try and read this, it's just very confusing. I spent a lot of my life reading this stuff. That people who work in these fields, very deep fields, and trying to understand this, their language is math. They're very poor at trying to explain these ideas. So basically, what what this experiment and what this viewpoint of that experiment is, what they mean by non-physical, what we're essentially saying, like I said, is imagine right now, this is my best way of putting it, is that imagine that you are something you can't conceive. We'll call it consciousness or the mind. They're referring to the mind. I don't think that's correct. You should say the consciousness is postulated to be non-physical. That I said, like, imagine you put on now a virtual reality headset that, like a TV or a hologram, where you can create information, visual information, and all the senses that you have, sensory information. You understand that let's imagine yourself as a glowing ball, we'll call consciousness, that you put on this headset, that what you are, the information you are perceiving within that headset is not really there. Like I said, when you look at a television set, you get that when you see a nature program, that's not actually there. It's just information that's on the screen. So this is the interpretation I have. This is what this experiment shows, is evidence of, and I already had this perception, as I said, and now science is showing this in this experiment to me. So this changes everything, because it means we can never achieve an objective measurement of anything within, like, so in other words, when we talk about science, so this is when I'm trying to explain this, when we talk about science, we're essentially measuring things within that virtual reality. We can never actually measure anything real, in the sense that it is our consciousness that is creating the game. And this is the problem. So and there's no way to bridge this currently. So imagine now everybody that you perceive as people, animals, things, and everything are all glowing balls that are somewhere else that we can't perceive, called consciousnesses, that are putting on these headsets, and then they all enter the game together. We don't even know if we're all entering the game together or we're all individually in a game. That's another thing. I mean, that's a complication, but this, for the sake of this argument, say that, and I've already said we're a collective, but let's say we want to experience, if you were part of a whole, like a cell is part of a body, but you wanted to experience individuality, then the way to do it was you put on this headset, and then in this virtual reality you are acting separately. So that's how I perceive that. But yeah, so a lot of people like get caught up in this and think, oh well, you know, is what we are, like, is it, you talk about quantum entanglement, which is something I didn't talk about. Our consciousness may be quantum entangled with this virtual reality, if you want to call it a virtual reality. Remember, I'm calling it virtual reality because that's just a way we can perceive what this is, but this is not a virtual reality. Another way, as I said, a dream. But whatever our consciousness is doing to create or manifest this is so far beyond our comprehension, it's pointless to even talk about it. Now, why did I say not mind, why consciousness? Because mind to me is more in this that for the sake of taking this metaphor of a virtual reality, in the virtual reality we manifest DNA code which constructs the virtual body, if you want to call it that, that our consciousness will in quantum entangle with. Quantum entanglement, if you want to look into that, to send the information to observe ourselves. So that's what, so mind to me refers more to that biological, virtual brain, the brain and mind, elements of it that are in this virtual reality, not your symphonic self, not your consciousness or symphonic self that I'm calling. Symphonic self is more more detail of what I've said about than just saying the word consciousness, which we will talk about, which is that you are, like I said, like a set of complex vibrations we could call music, and that's hence symphony, that are evolving and becoming more complicated and evolving in certain ways that I can perceive and talk about, which I have a little bit material to intellectual to higher self. So that's, I just wanted to clarify a few points there. You can spend a lot of time trying to read this, it will get very confusing, but that's the way what I am talking about. So I think it's useful for people to perceive consciousness as, picture a glowing ball that's like a piece of music and vibration, and then putting on, if you like, a virtual reality headset, because that's something we can understand now, or going into a dream and then creating this life, these experiences that you're having, but you then understand that that is like information on a TV screen or a hologram or a computer simulation, whatever it was that you want to use. But essentially you are creating that. Now, I said it's not just you, because you're part of this collective consciousness, this collective symphony, and it's all interacting in this domain. So we're all kind of evolving together. Some parts are further along the journey and some are less. Alright, I'm going to stop this here because I end up talking forever, but I just wanted to clarify those points in the previous video. The quantum entanglement, you can look into that yourself. It's just, it would be a mechanism by which this could occur. I'm not saying it is occurring through quantum entanglement, because I don't believe I think the rules of quantum physics and all the rules of physics are contained within the, if you like, the air quotes virtual reality, and that what you are in your consciousness and symphonic self outside of that would not be governed by any of these rules. And they're beyond our comprehension or understanding at this point. But eventually this domain, as I said, will evolve to be the same, and at that point we will understand what consciousness is, but it's a long way off. Talk more about that down the road. Okay, take care.